Here's what I've been working on since the last video. It's some aircraft. This is something that I've always really been into. I've always been into the, what do you call it, like, combined warfare? There you go. Aircraft, boats, and infantry. So I've worked on some different aircraft, and I want to talk about it. So I have three types here. We have a HE-51, which is a German interwar plane. It's the one that came before the Bf-109. We have a Hawker Fury. We have another Hawker Fury. And then we have the CR-32 from Italy. I think it might be the most modern plane here. And so, as you can see, some of them are a little small. So there's two scales. You have the 172 and the 148. And I think the 148 looks better. But in the sky, I think the 172 looks nicer. This is very big to move about, slow, unstable. So I think from the sky, it's not so bad, but yeah, I don't know. This is just majestic. So yeah, here are some guys for comparison, and yeah, I think they're really cool. This one I made. I have like these decals on. It's meant to be Anglican, but it didn't turn out so good. This one I bought. I'm not sure what squadron it is, but it's really nice. This is not for a very British Civil War, but I thought I'd show it off anyways. I think I put it in another video, just so it's in the lineup. And then this is Italian, with squadron markings. So this would be leased over, or, you know, this is an Italian pilot in there. So I also thought, since there's not a lot of content on a very British Civil War, I would not make lore, but like talk about aircraft. So this is the showcase. Thank you for watching, and I'm gonna swap over to that. So if you don't want to sit and watch the lore thing, you can call it here. And yeah. Okay, so now onto the aircraft. A very British Civil War is set in a really interesting period, in my opinion, because aviation is sort of changing. You're right before World War II, so you've got things like these older biplanes still flying, which mostly do all the fighting, like we see in the Spanish Civil War. But at the same time, you have some of the modern fighters beginning to appear, like the Hawker Hurricane. You have the Bf-109. So, but I think in a Civil War, you're still going to see older planes like the Hawker Fury, Gloucester Gladiator, the Fiat CR-32, and other foreign aircraft. So around this time, aircraft like the Hurricane, the Spitfire, the Bf-109 are beginning to change the era of war. They're fast, they're better, they're just great. I mean, compared to World War I, these planes are really good. But it's not 1940 yet, and it's it's not World War II yet, so most air forces are still using older aircraft. I mean, in World War II, the Gloucester Gladiator was still used, and I think in a Civil War it's going to be even worse. So even the biggest factions like the Royalists probably wouldn't be able to replace their air forces with better planes. So alongside modern planes, you'd probably see older stuff like the Fury, the Gladiator, the Hart, the Hind. I can't think of any other planes, so we'll just go with those ones. So I'm going to go through what aircraft I think each faction would have, starting from the best to the worst. So I think the Royalists probably have the best air force, since they have most of the RAF. They're also mostly aligned with Germany, but Germany isn't actually invested in the Civil War for some reason. I'm not sure why, at least compared to Italy. So I think you might see some support. I know that there aren't tanks sent over, but you might see aircraft like the Bf-109. But you might be more likely to see the Heinkel HE-51 or the HS-123. They would probably also have, they would have the RAF because, sorry, my mind is blanking. Well, because they inherited the RAF. So they probably have the most modern British aircraft, like the Hawker Hurricane. There could be some Spitfires, but not many. The Spitfire only entered service right before the war, and I mean World War II, so it'd be very rare to see a Spitfire. You'd be more likely to see the Hurricane, which is a cooler plane. But you'd still see the older RAF machines, like the Gladiator, the Fury, and the other ones I mentioned. But then we have the next faction, the Albertines. I think they also have one of the strongest air forces. I think the Albertines inherited a decent amount of the RAF because the RAF were more intellectual. They weren't too big of a fan of Mosley and stuff, and they would obviously have support from Canada, which is direct. So they'd be using mostly British aircraft, in my opinion, Hurricanes and the other ones. But I think they might get support from abroad by America, which is kind of a strange one because they don't really do much in a very British Civil War. So I think Canada would provide the most support, even though I know the Canadian Air Force in this time isn't great. But I think they might buy or receive American aircraft like the P-36. But I think the Albertines would have the most professional aircraft or air force. I don't know if it would be the biggest, but it would probably be the best. Yeah, so onto the BUF. I think the BUF is probably the most interesting because unlike the Royalists, who have the German support, the BUF has ties with Italy through Mosley and Mussolini. And if Italy gets involved, which they probably would, you'll probably see Italian volunteer pilots, advisors, probably even entire Italian divisions. If you look at the Spanish Civil War, the Italians sent like 60,000 men on 5 divisions as volunteers, and I don't know, that can't be legal. I don't know why no one did anything about it, but you'll probably see something similar. Probably not as big, but you would definitely see Italian aircraft like the Fiat CR-32, maybe even the CR-42 Falco, Italian bombers, ground attack aircraft probably as well. But it depends on how nice Italy is. I think domestically, the BUF probably wouldn't have many modern aircraft. They probably wouldn't even have RAF aircraft because they're allied with the Royalists, and so the Royalists would probably yoink it all. You'd probably definitely see civilian aircraft, like trainers that carry bombs, and they might have whatever they can steal or capture. But I think something to remember throughout the whole discussion is the majority of aircraft in a very British Civil War are pretty crap. They're going to be older, interwar, probably even reconnaissance, could even be civilian. So just keep that in mind. I think every faction would have that sort of base level of crap. So yeah, I can see the timer going up, but I can't talk any quicker. So onto the Anglicans, sorry. I'm not really sure how their air force would be. I know that they're aligned with the Albertine, so they'd probably rely on Albertine support. But I do know from some artwork, which is going to be on the page now, that they do have a flying corps, so they probably have their own aircraft. I think most of their aircraft would come from France, like the Potez 25 and other French planes I'm not going to mention. But I guess it depends on how likely France is to get involved. I mean, I know they sell and give like guns and helmets, but a helmet is different to a plane. But they probably also operate a mixture of British aircraft, but I can't see the Anglicans fielding a good or large air force, in my opinion. But that's just my thoughts. Then we have the Communists, or the Communes. I think this is entirely personal. I don't think the Communist air forces would be good. They'd probably be quite small. I know that most of the RAF remains loyal to the Royalists or the Anglicans, so the Albertines. So some pilots and aircraft could defect. I just don't think it would happen on a huge scale. So I think most Communist aircraft would probably be from the Soviets, like the Polkaparov thingy, I-15 and I-16. Especially because they were in Spain. A lot were in Spain. You'd probably also see older Soviet aircraft. I can't remember what it's called, but you have like the night fighter that was just horrible. They used in World War II in the Spanish Civil War. It's like a recon plane. You definitely have that. But I think the Soviet support would probably be from volunteer pilots and advisors, rather than just crater aircraft. I think some of the smaller communes, like in Wales, might have no air force, but some of the larger communes could manufacture their own aircraft or continue with the production, since I know that they have a decent amount of factories in the heartland, at least I think. I mean, that's what Birmingham's for, right? So I guess that it's not impossible. But I'm going to kind of like put all of the other factions into one here. So Scotland, the Jacobites, Colonel, Free Wales, Liverpool, all of that jazz. So I think for these groups, they'd probably be thinking more practical than prestige-wise. Most of them will be equipping infantry, armor, navies, rather than building an air force. So because of that, I think you'd mostly see civilian aircraft, things like mail planes, training aircraft, maybe even private aircraft would be pressed in. I think out of all the crap factions, Scotland would have the strongest, but probably because of its size, its industrial capability, and well, because there's airports, so they probably inherit some. But I don't think it could compete with any of the larger factions. And if we look at places like Warlord China, we can see smaller states just kind of fucking, they bought whatever they could, regardless of logistics. So I think you'd see the same here. One faction might fly a British trainer plane, buy a French reconnaissance aircraft, and also use a German aircraft all at the same time. So I think as a general rule of thumb, you could probably have any aircraft in any faction, from crap ones, probably not World War I era, but I mean, I guess, up to the latest monoplanes, so don't use too many. So yeah, I think the majority, I guess, to end it, the majority of planes you're going to see are going to be British, like the Hart, the Hind, Gladiator, the Fury, trainers, and civilian aircraft, and that would make up the bulk of it. I think that's what makes the setting really interesting, is because you got some of the most modern aircraft mixed in with some of the oldest and crappiest things, so it can be really interesting. And because the factions have really nice liveries and colours, you can really make your aircraft look nice. So yeah, thank you for watching. And I should say that this is all my opinion. There's no lore. There's nothing backing it. I don't have any sources. So if you have different opinions, that's fine. If you don't like what I think, that's okay. But I've kind of based it off what we know, and also what I think is most realistic. So yeah, thank you for watching.